Week 2 college football show. The show is scheduled for 12 Eastern time. We got off 2 minutes early. You know what that means? Bonus coverage. Chris, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm excited for today's college, or well, this weekend's college football, and yeah, it's a loaded card. You told me earlier today, you're like, yeah, it's a really good card. And I was like, really, how good could it be? And then I looked.
It's loaded.
There's a lot of good action on the board. Yeah,
This is the best card of the year so far.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the people that give out their game of the month.
Yeah,
And
I agree. This is a loaded college football card.
It's a good card. I think there's a lot. I think it could have even been better if some of the other teams would have come up decently. Like if Boise, we obviously, I don't even know what games are on the show today because Chris Ruffolo picked them out, so it's going to be mystery, and he didn't label them either for me, so it's going to be double mystery here. But we look at some of these games. I don't know if this is a game for the show or not. Is UCF Boise on the show, Chris?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so we'll talk about that one later. But I mean, Boise looked terrible in week 1. It's like, I think that's one that could have been a really good game, but I don't know if it's going to be. But anyways, Ron, after week 1, anything that we learned, anything that we should throw out, anything that we should remember, anything that we can say that we're going to be talking about in November. Oh, remember back in week 1 when everybody was saying Shakur Sanders was going to win the Heisman? Anything?
Yeah, I think I'm working on a little bit of a delay, so bear with me, guys. But the one thing I mentioned in my rundown video for college football is try to avoid overreacting to one single performance, especially week 1. It's easy to see a team do really well or do really poorly and think that that's the way the season's going to go the rest of the year. But I'd be careful. I think you're going to find value betting against teams that maybe had a really big week 1 that maybe aren't as good as what we saw, and then vice versa. Teams that maybe had a rough performance week 1, but they're a lot better than what we saw in the field.
To me, the story of week 1 has to be the Colorado Buffalo, and rightfully so. Coming from nowhere and beating TCU, who played in the championship game last year. I had TCU in that game. I lost. I've lost other games in my life, and I'll lose more in the future. But that one got me, and I expect, though, to I think Colorado is going to be an improved team, obviously, over what we've seen in recent years. Can they maintain that over the course of a full schedule? Well, we're going to find out, right? It's certainly going to be interesting to see. And, they're certainly going to get their chances for it to go both ways on them. So, I think it's always fun. You see things at the beginning of the season that you don't see at the end of the season. It's kind of like you remember back. Oh, remember at the beginning of the season, this was happening, this. And that, for me, it's always like, remember, these guys were ranked number 6. I love doing that. But, without further ado, I usually like to give people a chance to join us, especially when we start a couple minutes early. Chris, anything from week 1 that you want to just say that was bullshit, or that's something we can carry over for, a reminder, a guy that, who do you think was the biggest downside surprise, player or team?
Honestly, I think it was Boise State. I thought, I expected a little bit. They looked pretty good with Taylon Green leading the charge last year. But then again, you go from Dirk Cutter as your I'm going to talk about this when we get to the Boise State game, but you go from Dirk Cutter as your offensive coordinator to Bush Hamdan, and Hamdan's changed it up and wants to take away Taylon Green's legs, wants to make more of a pocket passer, and I think that's a mistake for Boise State. I think that if that's going to be the case for the entire season, I think we're going to find a lot of value betting against Boise State. I know it's not fun betting against the Broncos on the blue turf, but yeah, I didn't like what I saw from Boise State, and I'm really concerned.
Ron, how about you? Who do you think was what was the biggest disappointment from week 1?
I mean, I think Clemson's in the mix. I mean, it's kind of the same. We see a new quarterback in Klubnik at starting position instead of DJU, but we see the same issues. I mean, his team, a lot of mistakes fundamentally on the offensive side of the ball, turnover-wise, and I worry about that. We know that Clemson's got an elite defense, and they're not going to give up 28 points per game like they did that first game against Duke. But is Klubnik the answer? Is this offense going to be the firepower Clemson offense we're used to seeing last decade? Because it hasn't been the last couple of years, with at least last year with DJU. So a little bit concerned with.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to agree with you on Clemson. I think Klubnik, what we saw last year after we saw him early in the season and he looked great. And then all of a sudden we see him at the end of the season in the bowl game and he looked terrible. And I'll tell you what, he didn't look any better in that game against Duke than he did in the bowl game. So you almost have to wonder, is this what he is? At a certain point, you have to wonder, like with DJU, at Clemson, we got to the point where this is what he is. Right? So it's like that became part of the problem. With Klubnik, the high passes early, we've lost Ron, I'll keep going, but the high passes early with Klubnik, out to the running backs and stuff, just clearly over the guys' heads and things of that nature, was just bad. So for me, I thought Clemson was disappointing. I still thought that they played well enough to win the game. They just dropped the ball a bunch of times inside Undabo, football. Number 2 for me has to be LSU in that second half. I mean, huge expectations of this team. Brian Kelly had every excuse in the book for his 3 other college coaching jobs for not getting to the mountaintop. Always got his team to the mountain and up the mountain, but never to the mountaintop. Central Mich made them a winner. Cincinnati got them to the Sugar Bowl against Florida, where they got slaughtered. He didn't coach that game. In Notre Dame, he got them to the national championship, got them back to the national competitive level. But when he got to the big games, never got over the mountaintop, never won a playoff game. He got to the playoff, never won. Got to some big games at Notre Dame, got to the championship game against Alabama, got run over. And what we saw last night in the second half against LSU looked a lot like the first half against Alabama in that national championship game. So Brian Kelly, LSU, very, very disappointing. And for me, the most disappointing of all was Mordecai at quarterback for Wisconsin. Absolutely pathetic. Not even a step up over Graham Mertz. I got to say, this guy is terrible. It's points and fingers, signs of blames. Chris, you're muted if you're meant to be talking to us.
Sorry. I think Ron's back. I think he just said he needs to be put on the screen.
Yeah, he is back, and he is. Oh, I see what's happened. I got you on. I got you on preview mode.
I gotcha.
So I see you on the screen, but it wasn't published. Ron.
Yeah, I'm on a weird delay.
Any arguments with LSU or Tanner Mordecai?
I think, it was a rough week for Mordecai, but I think he's better than what we saw. I wouldn't overreact to one performance, but we'll see. It's another tough matchup this week for him.
How about LSU in the second half against Florida State?
Yeah, similar performance to a team like Florida, where there's just like so many mistakes. Like, you could tell the talent's there for LSU, obviously, but it just seemed like they weren't prepared, and it's a shame because it's week 1. What else are you preparing for? Other than the biggest game of the season. So that it just looked like Florida State's experience really showed up in that game.
I'm with you. Anyways, let's get into today's action. I think also Florida State's athletic ability and talent, and I think the state of Florida, football in the state of Florida, has always been at a different speed than everybody else plays. Now, it's gotten away a little bit from Miami and Florida State in recent years, but it's cyclical. And I've said this to people a lot of times, and they never seem to believe me when I say this, but it very, very much is cyclical. Look at the last 40 years of college football. It isn't different. It isn't anything else. It is exactly the same. It is cyclical, and it goes around and around and around and around. There's some new players in there that get speckled in. Some of them come and go. Some of them stay, but the bulk of the time, it's this cyclical thing. USC, Alabama, Oklahoma, right? It's these same schools kind of circling around in there. Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, same circle going around. Clemson, more recently, Auburn, also in the mix. I mean, SEC, Pac-12, goes all the way around. ACC, Reggie Bush when he was at USC, USC's never going to lose again. They're going to be good forever, right? Alabama, the day Nick Saban walks off that campus, believe me, it's going to be like Tom Osborne walking off the campus at Nebraska after winning 3 in 4 years. It's going to be the same thing. And, the day that Butch Davis walked off at Miami, and Jimmy Johnson walked off at Miami, and Howard Schnellenberger walked off at Miami. There's a lull in between, and it just happens, and we're going to see it again. People fail to admit or realize is that, Clemson won a couple national championships in between there as well, with that SEC run, and so did Ohio State. So, it wasn't all just SEC all the time. But I do believe that run's coming to an end. I think the SEC getting slaughtered in week 1 by ACC teams really was not a very good look. But in the SEC's defense, it wasn't Georgia and Alabama. So, that's the argument. And it's a very, very good argument, and not one that I can really have much of a defense for. But the depth of the conference is being tested. And it will be tested again this week with a lot of SEC teams going on the road and taking on some big out of conference opponents again. And some games are bigger than others. Like, I don't expect to see Arizona come in and blow Mississippi State out of the water or anything like that. But I think that some of the other games could be a little bit more interesting. Anyways, this one I don't think looks so interesting. But we've got Kansas hosting Illinois. It's a Big 10, Big 12 battle. It's the only game on Friday night, which is weird because it's such a good schedule of games this week. College football, they really have no excuses. They don't make any, and they don't try to make any. They always just say, well, this is what it is. And it's, this is the sport that, created instant replay, and then the very first year a guy waves his hand for a fair catch, grabs the ball, runs it in for a touchdown, and it's not covered under the replay policy, and so it stood. Anyways, Ron, what do you think? Chris, you're up first. Illinois at Kansas. 2 teams had surprisingly good years last year.
Yeah, and I think Kansas keeps it going here. I really liked what I saw from Kansas. Illinois. Sorry?
Are you on delay too?
What's that?
Are you on delay?
Maybe slight.
All right. I'll try and fix it.
I think I'm okay. I like what I've seen from Kansas last week. Illinois is a solid team, but again, I'm not there with Luke Altmaier. As a starting quarterback, I don't see him as that yet. Maybe that'll come with time, but Illinois, they struggled to get by Toledo, and I thought for a lot of that game, Toledo was going to be able to pull off the upset, had them with the points, and Illinois never really got out of Dodge, but I think they're going to have some trouble slowing down Kansas here. I think Kansas wins this one by a touchdown. Like I said, Illinois, they still have that solid defense, but Toledo picked them apart last week, and I think Kansas can do some of the same at home here. So give me Kansas laying the points.
Ron?
Yeah, and I think with underdogs, I like teams that can run the football and play defense. And that's Illinois. I mean, even last year when they had a really talented running back in Chase Brown, and they gave up only 13 points per game. And this year, they ran for about 5 yards per carry against one of the best defenses in the MAC. I think this defense keeps them in the game, gives them a chance to win it outright, and I'll take those points with the Fighting Illini.
I'm with Ron on this one. I'm going to take the points with Illinois. I don't love this game, and I think this is one of those ones that you could kind of, if you have to sit it out, you can sit it out. I don't think that if it was on a Saturday afternoon, I wouldn't be touching this game, and we probably wouldn't even be talking about we might be talking about it. It's one of those depends on the schedule, right, type games. I don't know if it would have made the show. So I'm going to take Illinois for the same reason that Ron said. I'm not 100% sold on either of these teams or what they're doing. I do like the job that Belima did last year at Illinois, and this might be his fit, and I think when you have a coach in the right spot, good things happen. I think what we saw at Illinois last year, too, is aside from the great running game, the secondary also, man, that they had, came out of nowhere. It's like if you have athletes and you have the right coach, good things happen, and I think we saw it, and I think that's what a lot of people are excited about at Colorado. But I'm probably going to say something that's not going to be as popular. We're not sure how good their coach is, because he hasn't won anything at this level, but Belima has. He's also been terrible at this level too. But anyways, I'm going to take Illinois as well. So Chris has Kansas. Ron, Illinois. Mitch, Illinois. And all right, next up. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time start. We get started an hour earlier, so we'll be on live college football show while this game is going on. It's Vandy and Wake, and it's once again an ACC-SEC matchup. So, Ron, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over in this one. I don't really trust Vanderbilt's defense, and we saw week 0 against Hawaii. The Rainbow Warriors moved the ball down the field almost all game, and if they didn't score, it was just like some issue, like interception, turnover on down, some mistakes by Hawaii, but they were moving the ball down the field almost all game. And Wake Forest, the ACC offense, not going to be as potent as it was last year with Hartman at quarterback, but I still think it's good enough to score at will in this game. I think Vandy's offense is the best we've seen it in years, so I think we see some scoring here. Can be the over.
I'm taking Wake Forest and I'm laying the points. I think the line tells you the whole story in this one. You got the ACC team taking on the SEC team, with the ACC team laying double digits against a Vandy team. As Ron said, really not that impressive against Hawaii from what we saw. They played again against, who did they play? They played us, right? They played against
Alabama
us.
A&M.
Yeah, they played against us. Basically, it was us three they played against, and they scored a lot of points. Congratulations, but I don't see it. I don't see it. So I'm going to take Wake. Wake has been to a bowl game 7 years in a row. So even pre-Sam Hartman, they were a bowl team, and they're going to be a bowl team again. And I think what we've seen is the ACC just whipping the ass out of the SEC, and I think it continues here, as long as Alabama and Georgia aren't playing. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well as Wake. I think Wake does all the heavy lifting in this one. And, Vanderbilt, Hawaii had their chances to beat Vanderbilt late in that game. And even though Vanderbilt's offense looked good there, Hawaii's did as well. And I think Wake will be able to pick them apart. Mitch Griffiths looked good in taking over for Sam Hartman. He knows this system, so I think Wake can do some damage. But I also think Vanderbilt chips in enough to get over the total. But all in all, I think Wake gets the cover. So give me Wake in the over.
All right. Ron, can you hear me now in live time, or are you still delaying?
I can hear you, but I'm guessing I'm still delayed.
No, that sounded exactly – you responded exactly in time. So
Okay.
I think you might be on now.
Well, how many fingers am I holding up?
0. How many am I holding up?
Maybe my video is all.
How many am I holding up? I don't know. I agree with you guys. I think that I think Florida's terrible. Yeah, I think that they were probably the biggest embarrassment in week 1. Ethel Mertz. How do you justify
Career day.
Oh my God, terrible. Anyways, next up we got the America's Sweethearts, Colorado Buffalo taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Coach Prime, got to give credit where credit is due. They're 20.5-point dogs, won outright on the road at TCU. I think the outright win, a win is a win. You take what you get, and the ball bounces your way sometimes, and the ball bounces the other way sometimes. And a lot of times is, as they say, you create your own luck. And I think Colorado did that. And I think when you take a lot of the bounces that happened in the game and the missed tackles by TCU, I mean, my God, and just the matador tackling, which a lot of it has to do with the athleticism of Colorado. I thought it was a fun watch, and I thought we clearly saw who could be the best player in the nation, and that is Hunter. And we knew that coming in. It was not like, it was a surprise. It's not like Jackson State was the only one that offered. I mean, the way they play the story out, and this is kind of the annoying thing, is the way they play the story out is like Jackson State's the only one that offered him, and now that Coach Prime got the job at Colorado, now he's elevated to the FCS. Alabama offered him, Georgia offered him, Florida State offered him, Miami offered him, Ohio State offered him, LSU offered him, Florida probably offered him. Everybody offered Hunter. He probably had 120 Division I offers. Ron, do you think, am I overstating this or what?
He was heavily recruited, yeah. He was
the guy.
Georgia, yeah.
Yeah, all the who's who, right? The upper echelon, the upper crust, USC, right? The upper crust of college football. Offered this guy. So he didn't come out of nowhere. He's not like a surprise story. He's not like this out of nowhere guy. He's a guy that played at Jackson State when he could have played anywhere else. And, he played at Jackson State because of his relationship with Coach Prime. And I thought that was pretty interesting that he said, wherever he's going, I'm going with him. That just shows that they have a relationship, and he's hugging him before the game or whatever. It's almost like Manny Pacquiao and Freddie Roach used to be before a fight. Well, here comes Nebraska, and you got a coach that can really freaking cover point spreads here, and we saw him do it again last week against Minnesota. And this rule can really, I mean, I think Colorado might be the more I know they are the more athletic team in this game. They are clearly the faster team in this game. I think a lot of things that we saw from Colorado in that game, not fluky, not nothing like that. I mean, 4.3 40s across the board is not fluky. There's nothing fluky about that. That running back on the game-winning touchdown run, there was nothing fluky about that, man. If that was the guy Corkum at Michigan, they'd be screaming Heisman. Is that his name, Corkum? Is that his?
Like Corum.
Corum. Yeah, that's Corum. They're screaming Heisman, right? It's like, it was that kind of run. With all that being said, I'm taking Nebraska plus the points. I just think that Rule can get him there. I think this is going to be a hard-nosed game. This is a rivalry game. What a lot of people don't realize about this game, this is a rivalry game, and these teams normally play that day after Thanksgiving. I don't know why that's not the day after Thanksgiving this year, but it's now. So I'm going to take Nebraska in the points. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Colorado here. I think I'm going to have to start maybe looking at the other side, maybe next week when they play Colorado State before they get into the heart of that Pac-12 schedule. But as much as we talked about Jeff Sims last week, he did not look good in that game. I think he's just very turnover prone. And Colorado, don't get me wrong, their rushing offense last week against TCU was not good. And they averaged less than 3 yards per carry. And Nebraska's defense is going to show up here, but I just think that Sims makes that late mistake, and Colorado wins this one by 4 to 7 points. I'm gonna go with Colorado laying the points.
Don't you think though that Sims is his poor play and his sloppy play fits Rule's style, where it's just this mucky, dirty, nasty game that just keeps in it and gives you a chance to cover in the end. That's all he's trying to do is cover in the end, and that's what he does. He's like, look, we're getting three.
Sure.
We're getting 3. I think we can muck this around. I think we can muck a little bit here, and I think a couple bounces go our way. We might even pull the upset, but at worst, we're looking at 3. We're starting 3 points ahead. Let's look at it that way, and that's what he did against Minnesota, which was about as cover as you can get. You could talk about how lousy they were against Minnesota, but it was about as clean as a cover can be. I mean, they were getting a touchdown They only gave up 13 points. You don't need to do much, you know? You don't need to do anything. I mean, here they're only getting 3. A little bit different story. Ron?
Yep, I don't consider this an upset win for Nebraska. I think, if Colorado didn't pull off that upset over TCU, we'd see Nebraska as like a 7-point favorite. So if, I think that's just overreaction. I think the betting market's overreacting to one performance. When you look at Nebraska, they do everything they do everything right that Colorado has. I have concerns with Colorado, and that's just on the offensive and defensive line. Nebraska can run the football well. They ran for about 5 yards per carry in that game at Minnesota. They can stop the run. They held Minnesota to 2.2 yards per carry. The big issue for Nebraska was the turnovers. They had 4 turnovers in that game. They were -3 in the turnover differential. You clean that up, you win that game on the road at Minnesota, a very tough conference, first game of the season kind of game. I think Nebraska has really got a big advantage on both the offensive and defensive line. And that's where games are won and lost in college football. So I'm going to take the points with Nebraska, but I don't think we need them.
So one of the comments, he must not know Prime, LOL. But you must not know Coach Rule because this guy's the king of the cover, man. He is the undisputed king of the cover. So they might not win this game. This could be one of those overtime games. It goes to that 2-point thing back and forth. We're getting 3. Hey, I'm sleeping by the time they get to that overtime, right? It's like, Rule is the king of the cover. What is he? 10-3 in his last 13 college games, or 11-2 or something, against the number in his last 13 college games. He can come all he wants. I'm getting 3 points, man. Tell you that. I'm getting paid. That's all I care about. I can care less, man. I'm not hating. I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to make a couple bucks betting on football. That's what I do. That's how I pay my bills. And I've done so for quite some time. We'll talk about another game. The Baylor Bears, Chris. UGLY. You don't need no alibi. That's what the U stands for in Baylor. Even that BU. Texas State. And then Utah on the business end of the beatdown on opening night in the circle game against Florida. They clearly had that game circled.
Yeah, 100% they did. They definitely took it out on Florida, and I think that they take something out here on Baylor as well. It looks like we could see Cam rising back for this game. But more so, even what's concerning for me is that Baylor, no Blake Shapen, it looks like for at least 2 to 3 weeks. He's their quarterback, and when you didn't look great to begin with, with or without Shapen, I have a hard time thinking that you're going to do anything different against a much better Utah defense, even at home, with your backup here, Baylor. They just looked terrible against against Texas State. I don't think they're going to look very good against Utah here. I look for Utah to really ring up Baylor in this one. I'm going to go with Utah laying the points.
See, Jay is saying in the comments that Nebraska scored off a trick play last week, and that was their only points. But then that's true, But that Minnesota defense is light years better than Colorado's defense. Light years better. So that's the issue here is that I think we saw Colorado in the hurry up and all that stuff, and you're up against a coach that really knows what he's doing. And like I said, he goes in knowing he's getting 3 to start the game, and they're going to have. So it's kind of like a batter that he might get out, but he gets 9 pitches, 10 pitches into the count, and I think that's what's going to be with Colorado. I think they're going to move the ball, and I think it's going to be like Navy. 3 down, 4 down first downs, and drag that defense up and down the field and up and down the field. And that's the way to do it, not to hurry up the way that TCU did. You got to, if you can get like a Bill Parcells style offense, boring ass, Nebraska style pro set, or even the I formation, and you just punch it up the gut on a very, very small defensive line, you can get that 4, 5, 6, 4 yards every time It's like it is a long, long, long wind-sucking day for that defense. Very, very long. And I think that is what people are looking at. And that's why you have that low number. Because if you just look at athlete versus athlete, it's 165-3 Colorado. I mean, if you go by track meet. But if you go by that sort of game. So that's the argument here. And we'll see it on the field, how it plays out. I mean, there's a reason they play the game. But anyways, Ron, you said earlier in the show, reaction and overreaction. You got both sides of the coin in this game. You got Baylor, who lost to Texas State as a 27.5-point favorite. So the Colorado upset was not the biggest upset of the day. The biggest upset of the day was this one, where Texas State beat Baylor as a 27.5-point dog. And then you have Utah in a very, very public game because it was the Thursday night game. It was opening night. It was all of those things. Hosting Florida. It was the big game of opening night, right? It was the big one. And they performed extremely well in that game. I mean, I think the first play, they 75-yard touchdown. You think the lines here and everything maybe overreacting as well a little bit?
I do. I'm actually really glad the Pac-12 had a great week one because it's going to give us a lot of value betting against them the rest of the season. There's a reason why this conference year after year, the teams in it take each other out in terms of their chances of making the college football playoff. They're just not good enough, and I don't think Utah's good enough on the road here. I don't care who's starting a quarterback for either team. I mean, Utah won that game over Florida because Florida shot itself in the foot over and over and over, whether it was the pre-snap penalties or having two number threes on the field. It was an ugly game for Florida Gator football, and that's the coaching staff for Florida. But I don't think Utah won that game as much as Florida lost it, and I don't like Utah on the road. This is a team at Utah that plays very well on its home field. You go on the road, even against a Baylor team that's coming off that tough loss, I don't like your chances, especially if you're going to have to make me lay over a touchdown. I think Baylor wins the game outright, but I'll take the points.
I'm going to go with Baylor in this 30 points. I don't know who wins the game, but I think it's going to be a close one. I think Dave Aranda is a great coach, man, and I think this guy's like an NFL coach. I think this guy's, he says all the right things, he looks all the right way, he walks all the right thing. He owns his decisions when he makes them, and they're not like the stupid decisions like some of these coaches that we've seen over the years. It's like, why did you make that decision? Because it was my decision to make. It's like he doesn't do that. He explains it out, and this guy is just a great coach. I don't see him losing this game badly if they lose at all. I like Utah. I like Kyle Whittingham. I said all those things about them last week. But I think this week, Baylor at least covers the spread. I think this could be one of those overtime games as well. I think it's that style of game. And I think Utah's a really good team. And I think they're a little better than Ron gives them credit for. I think of the Pac-10 teams, they're the closest to being a regular team of the Pac-12 teams or whatever it is, Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever. They're the closest to being a regular football team. Them and Stanford maybe are the closest. It doesn't mean they can't compete. I mean, we saw Oregon beat the crap out of Ohio State a couple of years ago at the Horseshoe. Anyways, I'm taking Baylor here. I just think it's a lot of points to be given Dave Aranda at home coming off of a horrid loss. So that's my angle. I agree with Ron on the reactionary. That's why I asked him that. That's why I fed it up to him like a softball.
Easy.
Well, this one, nothing easy about this. NC State taking on Notre Dame. NC State, ACC team. Notre Dame, quasi-ACC team. ACC football team, right, is what they are. And basketball.
ACC basketball, independent football still.
Play 4 football games, ACC. NC State didn't look great last week against UConn. I mean, they did not. Notre Dame has played, a Navy team that won 4 games last year, got their coach fired. And then they played, I don't even know who the hell they played that next game, but they showed it on national TV. Ron, what do you think of this thing?
Yeah, I think NC State was kind of put in a tough spot in week one where they were, on the road against a UConn team that has a lot of expectations this season, and a lot of people had them on upset alert. And I know UConn covered, but I think NC State, took care of business in that game. It wasn't a flashy game, it wasn't a sexy game, but they got the job done. They won by double digits. I do think it's really tough to go into NC State and beat them up, and then especially, Notre Dame's looked great the first 2 weeks, but you're not, like you said, you're not playing Navy. I hesitate to land this many points here. I think NC State keeps this game close, within a touchdown. I'm going to take the points.
I'm with Ron. I think NC State has a chance to win the game outright, but I at least like them with the points. Notre Dame is super talented, and I think what a lot of people always fail to realize is that, because now we have this younger generation coming into college football that, Ron is part of it, and, there's other people too, and they don't realize the college football tradition and, how much in pro football, you don't really have a choice as to where you go. I mean, in free agency, you have a choice, but it's really who's going to give you the most money, at the end of the day, when you go free agent. But in college, it's like there's generations that go to the same school and, grew up watching the same school. And, you want to go to this school since you were a kid. And Notre Dame is just always going to be one of those schools. They just are. Academically, it's super difficult, and they are tough on their athletes, a lot tougher than most of the other schools are. So it makes it a much tougher job, and that's why Brian Kelly left. But Marcus Freeman this guy can recruit like no one's freaking business, and I'm going to expect that this Notre Dame team is going to be pretty good. I don't think Sam Hartman is anything that NC State hasn't seen before, since they've seen him before. And, of course, NC State, when it comes to continuity at head coach, 11 years this guy's been there. Can you believe that? Who would have thought? Longest tenured college coaches, 11 years at NC State. Time flies, right? Time flies, man. I like NC State. We saw them in the rain a few years ago against Clemson. Was it 2 years ago? Against Clemson in a similar week of the similar time of the year. NC State always tough at home. Never as good on the road. I'm going to take NC State here plus the points. I think they got a chance to win. Chris?
Yeah, I was initially looking at Notre Dame at first glance, but now I'm having a couple days to digest. I kind of like asking me NC State in the points zone with you as well. We've seen Hartman in the past against this NC State defense, and Tony Gibson, defensive coordinator, and we've seen Hartman through equal to touchdown to interception ratio, 6 touchdowns, 6 picks. In 3 matchups against NC State when Hartman was with Wake Forest. So, Gibson knows how to drop pressure and drop defensive schemes against Hartman. And I think NC State can do enough here. Brennan Armstrong looked really good in his NC State debut, and I think he can do enough here to at least keep this one within a touchdown. So give me Notre Dame in the points.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a better game than people expect. It's Iowa versus Iowa State. I think I saw a couple of the Iowa State players down at the sports book over at the MGM here in Vegas. I don't know what's going on there. It's just an odd situation at Iowa State, and I always believe that off the field leads to on the field. The problem with Iowa the last 2 years for me is like eventually you got to score points. It's like the team that scores the most points wins the game. I know this. I'm stealing your thunder here, Ruffolo, with with the deep conversation. But really, at the end of the day, the team that scores more points than the other points wins. So you have to at least score a point. And for Iowa to score a point, it just seems to be very, very troubling. How about this, man? Brees Hall and Purdy were both at Iowa State, and it's like, I really thought they were going to be really good, and they weren't even that good. It's like these guys are like legitimate NFL starters. Purdy starts for the 49ers. A lot of people have them going to the Super Bowl. I'm talking like a championship team. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm taking Iowa. I think the Iowa State players are probably thinking that they got the hook, so they're good on this one. But I think Iowa. I could see this one. I like the under too, 36.5. No chance, man. I like this one under 24. I would go extended under as well. Chris?
Yeah, I think this game is a very similar feel to the one we saw last year. I think we saw 20. I think it was 24 points or 21 points in that game. Could even be less than that, but yeah, this game is always hard hitting. It's always a game that's played between the 20s. Game that basically stays in the trenches, and I look for this game to be no different. This could be the first to 10 wins of this game, so I'm going to take the under 36.5 here.
What was the deal with the trophy in this one? Didn't they change the trophy and then they had to change it back or something?
Yeah, it was something like that.
They hated the look of the new trophy. It's like, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, it was actually 17 points in that last year's game, and the under is 16-2 in the last 18 meetings between these two teams. And the home team's also not done too well. It looks like they are 2-8 in the last 10 meetings straight up, and 3-6-1 against the number the home team is. So give me Iowa and the under.
Moving right along. Well, one that I care about, got Miami against Texas A&M. Chris, you're up first.
I'll keep it short and sweet so that can let the Miami backer among us get to it. But I'm going to take the Hurricanes here plus the points. I'm not overcomplicating. I'm not a Texas A&M fan. I think Miami's had this game circled. Get revenge after last year, and now go from College Station to Miami for this one. I think the Canes get it done here. I don't even know if we need the points, but I'll take them for safety.
I'm going to go under the total in this one. I really like the Texas A&M defense. I think Miami's defense is revamped as well. They look really strong in that first game. I think we see both teams a lot of tackle for losses, some sacks, maybe some holding penalties early on, and similar. I mean, last year was 17-9 final score, so I think we see a little bit more than that. But I still think we get under this.
I think Miami was right there last year, and I think kind of like that Utah game. They've had it circled all year on that Utah-Florida game, and it's one that they've been looking forward to. They knew that Texas A&M was coming back. Bobby Petrino takes over as offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, and he always has a lot of success against Miami. At Louisville, he had a lot, but the Canes know that, and this is a different day in Miami. I don't think the Canes are all the way back. I thought Mario Cristobal was honest in the post game interview, saying, "Yeah, it feels good. We played as well as we have, probably better than any game we played last year. It's Miami of Ohio, and it's a 5-year plan, and that's really what it is." And I thought that the offensive line for Miami looked exceptional. I think number 61, Muliaga, I believe his name is could be the greatest offensive lineman to ever play at Miami. And that is a very, very big thing because there's been some great ones. There's some NFL Hall of Famers that played at Miami. But this guy, true freshman, 18 years old, oh, man. I've never seen anything like this before. This guy is unbelievable. Also, the center that he got from UCF, tremendous, some leadership there on the offensive line with all those young players. Cristobal also got, other people were raiding the transfer portal for wide receivers and running backs and things like that, like where, Colorado got a lot of their players. Miami went for the offensive line, and you can see it. The games are won and lost in the trenches, and it might not be the most exciting place that you see it happen, but that's if you're going to win and you're going to turn a program around, it's not a bad place to start. I think Miami's got a solid chance here. I think four-headed monster at running back, Restifo back at wide receiver. Once he was out last year, they didn't win again. He's Van Dyke's roommate. And of course, the other receiver they got, the guy they got from Alabama, is exceptional as well. So I think I like Miami here. Of course, I was going to take him anyway. It really doesn't matter. Everyone knows that. I'm unapologetic homer in that one. But I really do like what's going on in Miami. I'm not saying we're all the way back. I'm just saying we're way further ahead than most people will give us credit for. The fact that like Duke is ranked this week and Miami isn't is sad. Miami could wipe their ass, slaughter them. Wouldn't even be close. Anyways, Ole Miss taking on Tulane. This is an interesting battle as well. This is a real show up to the party game for Tulane. They showed us something last year, but here's their chance against the SEC. Lane Kiffin, right, major asshole, head coach for Ole Miss. He loves to stick it to the little guys. We'll see if he's able to do it. 67 on this thing. Ron, 67.
Yep.
67. Just
I don't think it's deep enough.
Just south
67.
of 10 touchdowns.
Yep, I don't think it's steep enough. I like the over. When we've seen Tulane play these tougher teams, they've gone over the total. Their defense can't keep up. Their offense is strong. I like Michael Pratt, but look at the games last year against USC in the bowl, 46-45, against UCF, 45-28, against SMU, 59-24, UCF again, 38-31. Back a couple of years ago against Ole Miss, 61-21 loss in that one on the road. And then we saw last week against South Alabama, they put up 37 points. This offense looks strong. We know Lane Kiffin, whether they're up by 30, down by 30, they're going to be playing full 4 quarters. He has no problem, running the football, throwing the football up by 30. So we should see both teams looking to score for the entire game. No chewing the clock in this one. Give me the over.
I'm taking Tulane in this one plus the points. I like the hook, but I don't even think we need it. I don't even know if we need the points at all. I think it's exactly like what Ron said. Track meet up and down. Last team with the ball wins, and that's what it really comes down to here. Lane Kiffin, I don't know. I'm still not sold. And as long as there's not an airplane hangar close by, he's probably safe. But let's just say they're going to have to get on the plane and get home. So we know that it'd be interesting. I wonder how Kiffin's airplane hangar behavior is these days. It's got to still leave a mark.
His decorum at the airplane.
He's the only coach I ever know to be fired in the airplane hangar. Belima was fired on the field at Arkansas, and Lane Kiffin was fired in the airplane hangar. Chris, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm on the over here as well. I also lean towards Ole Miss plus the points. I looked at this game. I thought 45-38, whichever way you have it going. I think it's going to be an entertaining matchup. Even if Ole Miss, gets ahead, we know Lane Kiffin is like you said, Mitch. I'm not going to use the a-hole word, but you know what I've used words. Yeah, he's an asshole. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, he doesn't take his foot off the gas, but I don't think Tulane's going to give him the chance to. I think Tulane's going to try to go shot for shot here. I like Michael Pratt. I like this Tulane offense, and maybe not the biggest fan of the defense. So give me the over 67, lean towards Tulane plus the points.
All right. Moving right along. Washington up against Tulsa. Washington pretty impressive last week. Chris picked out the games this week. I'm not sure where he was going with this one. I think we got a loaded card, and we got a 34.5-point spread, and Michael Penix maybe just loves Penix. I have no idea. Chris, what was you thinking on picking this one on this awesome slate of games? And we already got 15 on the show. What was your idea? I'm ready to pass on it. I'm ready to pass. Show of hands. Anyone vote we pass? You're outvoted. Sorry, Chris. It was nice talking to you about this game. Anyways, we got Pitt up against Cincinnati. Cincinnati loses, their head coach along with a lot of talent from last year's team. But these guys are kind of in rebuild mode and always play with a chip on their shoulder. Pitt, trying to establish themselves back to the Tony Dorsett days, the Dan Marino days, and all that other stuff. Haven't quite got to that level yet, but I kind of like the way they play. I'm going to roll with I think this is going to be a good game. I like Cincinnati with the points. I think Pitt wins the game.
Don't you know who the quarterback at Cincinnati is?
Who's the quarterback at Cincinnati?
Emory Jones, your favorite.
Oh, I'll take Pitt. I'll lay double, actually, then, if that's the case. I'm on Pitt, and I'll lay 14.5. Chris? You can talk about the other game, too, if you want. If you need to talk about Tulsa.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll move past it. I'm going to take the over 46 here.
What was your logic on that one? I just need to know.
Top 10 team. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that Washington performance against Boise State. That's all.
I thought they were pretty good, and I thought, it's tough to tell. Was it Washington being that good, or was it Boise being that bad? I mean, it's like we don't know. But it was all in the second half, right? Once the game was decided is when it kind of got really – it was close for a while, that game.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But for this one, I like the over 46. I did like what I saw from Emory Jones in that opener. And Pitt's defense hasn't necessarily had a tendency to be the strongest in the past. So I think Cincinnati can put some points up here. But I think Pitt does more than enough against Cincinnati to get themselves a win and cover here. When I first looked at this one, I saw 28-20 at the absolute least. So I think 46 is too low in this one. I'm going to take the over 46, lean towards Pitt.
I like the under in this one. I just can't trust the quarterback play from either of these teams. Emory Jones looked really good against Eastern Kentucky, but that's EKU. Now on the road, I think he makes a few key mistakes in this game. Jerkovich has been in the league for a while, or in college football for a while. We haven't seen him do really anything on a high level. Two good offensive lines. Should be able to trust in their ground game. And we know with the new rules, it's going to chew a lot of clock on those rushing first downs. So give me the under.
Emory Jones. Go to Tuscaloosa, where Alabama is taking on Texas. I'm seeing different lines on this. I've seen 7s, but 7.5 does change the story just a little bit, but doesn't change the head coaches. Chris, what do you got in this one?
Yeah, I went back and forth on this one because, like you said, 7.5 is a big one here. I mean, last year it didn't really factor in. I think we finished 20-19 for Alabama, but I've seen some places people say that this is the least talented Alabama that they've had in some time. But let's face it, still really talented Alabama. They always reload year in and year out. Is Jalen Milroe the best quarterback we've seen at Bama? No, but he's been good enough, and I think he's good enough here against Texas. This is a game I'm probably going to settle in just to watch as a fan, more than actually putting a hefty bet on this one. But I lean towards Alabama. I just can't get there with Texas. I think Bama does enough, wins this one by 10 points, 34-24.
Ron?
Yeah, lean for me towards Texas and the points. I think it's like I would agree with Chris. A game to watch rather than have a big wager on. But Texas was right there with them last year. Alabama still has a lot of new pieces on the offense, and they look strong against Middle Tennessee. But I honestly think Middle Tennessee, one of the weaker mid-major schools this year, they lost a lot of production from last year's team. So. I think we see a close game. I think Bama wins and probably wins. I think they're probably leading the game throughout, but I think Texas maybe finds a backdoor, loses the game by about 4 points. So I'll take the points with the Longhorns.
Last year I predicted a woodshedding by Alabama. This year I get it. I think that Texas at Texas. I thought last year they beat Alabama. I think in all fairness, and the Texas fans can complain about Bryce Young and the really ridiculous, not intentional grounding, non-safety call in a 1-point game. So that was the difference in the game on the scoreboard. And really on the field, I thought Texas outplayed Alabama pretty much most of the way. But it is Steve Sarkisian on the road in a big game. And, I mean, this one has the chance to be 52-0. I mean, this is a Nick Saban. Nick Saban also remembers last year's game was only a 1-point game. And Nick Saban can really coach his guys. You can call it the least talented Alabama team they've ever had or anything like that. I say this was the #1 recruiting class in the nation, and these guys are freaking loaded. He has a coaching staff of head coaches. This is a very, very good Alabama team and a well-coached Alabama team against an absolute stiff. A guy who has never won more than 8 games in a season against a guy who has more national championships than anybody at home in Tuscaloosa after only winning by 1 point in a game people say he got lucky in last year. He's going to make sure that people don't think it's going to be lucky this year. Nick Saban eats 2 oatmeal pies for breakfast every morning. I think you might eat a third on Sunday to celebrate the win. I'm going to take Bama in a big way in this one.
Out of the oatmeal pie.
You guys hear my wife in the background?
Yeah.
She said, "Where did you get this shit?" I watch a lot of football. Everyone knows that. He eats 2 Little Debbie oatmeal pies every morning for breakfast. Nick Saban does. He does. He has a coffee with 2 Little Debbie oatmeal pies every morning for breakfast. Yes. Breakfast of champions. Texas Tech against Oregon. This is one of the more mispronounced teams in all of college football, Texas Tech. You have a Texas Tech team that lost last week outright against Wyoming, an Oregon team that's in the Pac-12, which means Romanelli is usually going the other way. Ron, what do you think?
You got it. Give me Tyler Shuck, the former Duck himself. Shuck the Duck is going to lead the Red Raiders to an outright victory. I think Wyoming is really undervalued. I think they were undervalued in that game. I think they're a solid team this year, especially defensively. But now you're going back to Lubbock, which is a super tough place to play. And you guys know my opinion on the Pac-12, so I'll just leave it at that. Give me Texas.
I'm taking Oregon in this one. I agree with some of the things that Ron said there, but I do think that Oregon is just the more talented team. I think Texas Tech has got some problems here that we saw rear its ugly head against Wyoming. It's called a shit kicker. And a shit kicker really can take you out of a game because settling for field goals is certainly a problem, but being forced to go for touchdowns in situations where you should just take the chip shot field goal and get the points on the board is part of the game and part of what keeps you in games against teams that are probably going to be super competitive because they're way athletic, like Oregon always is. And I think that Texas Tech, that kicker problem, well, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. It's a big deal. I'm taking Oregon. Hate bad kickers. Hate them. And they're Ruffolo on Kentucky.
This is a tough one for me. Because I like Texas Tech, but I like it when it was at 7. I think I saw it at 7.5 at one point, but 6.5 to make stuff. Because I think this is a 1 touchdown game. So for right now, I'll lean towards Oregon. I know weird things happen in Wyoming, so that's why I think we saw from Texas Tech, and it was just a bad spot on the road in Laramie at the altitude with Oregon on deck. But I still think that Oregon's just a better team here, so lean towards Oregon, but not when I'm rushing to bet.
Yeah, you guys said the same thing about that Alabama game. I'm rushing to bet it. Don't worry about it. I got you covered on that one. The books will stay open another day.
Okay.
Well, here is that Boise game against UCF that we've been waiting for on the show. Boise, absolutely terrible in the second half. You got a defensive coach against a UCF team that, oh man, these guys, once again, these guys always play like someone did them dirty. They do. They play like they're mad that someone wronged them, disrespected them, and everything else. And I don't think Boise's got enough in the tank to really hold up in this game. They have a defensive head coach, which is a nice thing. I mean, you're playing against an offensive head coach. But the problem is that this UCF team can score a lot of points really fast. And I don't think Boise has what it takes to fire back, even on the blue turf. I'm going to take UCF on the blue turf. Don't adjust your sets. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to take UCF as well. From a UCF perspective, I think UCF has the same game plan as Washington last week. It's basically Washington light with, you sub out Michael Penix, you put in John Rhys Plumlee. And
I think UCF is a better team than Washington. I think they'd take them out any day of the week.
Yeah, so I like this UCF
Whoa!
offense. And I touched on it.
Did you hear them disregard me there? That's fine. Why always pick
No.
in the comments?
All right, fine. I'm picking on you. Yeah, okay. No, I don't know because I think UCF Washington would be a pretty good game. But you look at Boise State. I touched on it earlier. I don't like Bush Hamdan running this Boise offense. Like I said, he wants to take Taylon Green's legs away. He wants to keep him in the pocket. But being mobile is the best part of Taylon Green's game and the best way that Boise State can move the football. So I think he's also got the offensive line making all the pre-snap calls as well, taking that out of the quarterback's hands as well. And it's not a good situation here for that Boise State offense. I'm going to be looking to fade Boise a lot this season. And with UCF on the road, on the blue turf, I think this is no different. I'm picking UCF big here.
Give me the points with Boise State. I think this is another game where you have to be careful of overreacting. I mean, UCF took down Kent State, which I think is one of the worst teams in the MAC this year. They lost their coach, they lost their quarterback, they lost a lot on defense, and they were already pretty crappy on defense to begin with. UCF, they've got a great running back group. Richardson, Harvey, these guys can run like the wind. But you're facing a Boise State team that even in the game against Washington where they gave up 56 points, they gave up less than 100 rushing yards. And last year, only 3.5 yards per carry on the ground. Boise State's run defense has been perennially good. And, I think Boise, when you look at the game against Washington, Boise State was up in the middle of the second quarter. They took themselves out of that game, and it was ugly in the second quarter, no doubt about it. But it was only a 22-21 first down advantage for Washington. They had a few big bomb plays, but Boise State still had over 400 yards of offense against the Washington team on the road. Now UCF has to go across the country to Boise State, which are not used to doing stuff like that. Boise State has a huge home field advantage. Give me the points with Boise State. I don't think we need it.
All right. We saw Hank Bachmeier last week at New Mexico State. Just throwing it out there. Go to Wazoo, where Washington State takes on Wisconsin. Make sure you know which team is wearing which uniforms before the game starts. Easily confused. Luke Fickell's second game as Wisconsin's head coach. Chris has got the graphic messed up. That's okay. We know who's playing it. It's Wisconsin minus 5.5 to 6, depending on where you're looking at it. This one is Chris.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Wisconsin here. I just can't get there with Washington State yet. I'm sure Washington State's gonna have a nice season, but I just think Wisconsin's the better team. I know Tanner Mordecai didn't look good last week, but for me, this is just all about the coaching here. I like Luke Fickell, and I like him to lead Wisconsin to a touchdown win here on the road against Washington State. It's hard for Mordecai to be any worse than he was in week 1. So give me Wisconsin here.
It's playing a better team, so it's very possible. Ron?
Yeah, me and Chris have been agreeing all show, haven't we? But no, I actually do agree with Chris here. Wisconsin, I think Mordecai's a lot better than what we saw. And I just think Wisconsin's better in general. This is a team that's always good defensively, some of the best defensive numbers in all of college football. I think similar to Iowa, they made some improvements on the offensive side. They already got a really good running back group, strong offensive line. They ran for 8 yards per carry against Buffalo, over 300 rushing yards. Mordecai will get better. Washington State, I give them credit. I didn't see that blowout win coming against Colorado State. It was on the road, beat them by 36 or 26 points. But I'm just a little careful to overreact to that one performance. They still gave up over 350 yards to a bad offensive team that played 2 different quarterbacks. So I think Wisconsin takes care of business, and we're getting Wisconsin at a really good price because they failed to cover last week and because Washington State earned that blowout win.
Yeah, last year the world was on Wisconsin also against Washington State, and it looked like Wisconsin was ready to make the comeback at home on them. They came out of the third quarter doing the jump around and right into that very same end zone. Washington State blocked a field goal on the very next play, and it was ball game. And I think Washington State doesn't like being disrespected by Wisconsin. I think that I think they're a better team than people give them credit for. Not a lot of people get to see Washington State because they, like the Pac-12, I mean, gee, I wonder why we went out of business. We play all our games at 11:30 at night on weekdays and on a channel that nobody gets on their cable system. And no one wants to. It's like this is really not all that tough to figure out. But I think Wazoo is really not a bad program and historically a very good program. They're a lot better than most people think. And that Colorado State team is that coach at Colorado State is like, I mean, they're about, if you think they're high on Coach Prime, they're double high on that guy. What's his name, Ron? The guy at Norville or something. It's like they're twice as high on that guy, the Colorado State guy. So I think that Washington State being once again disrespected here at home, and Luke Fickell, this is not his first rodeo in the Big Ten. He was Jim Tressel's replacement at Ohio State as the interim head coach, and was absolutely hideous in the Big Ten. Coaching there was just smacked around, and that's when Ohio State hired Urban Meyer, who kept Fickell on staff because Fickell was an alum of Ohio State and made him the linebackers coach and then the defensive coordinator. So, not Fickell's first rodeo in the Big Ten, and not the first time we've seen a Fickell team in the Big Ten play the way they did against Buffalo in that game. They go on the road here to Washington State once again, living on nothing but just reputation. And Tanner Mordecai looked a lot like Cade Klubnik in that game, a lot like him, except maybe a worse version of him. He's not good. And I'll tell you what, I think Washington State wins this one fairly easily. In other words, Chris, you're foolish and lack vision.
Yeah.
And USC and Stanford, only 10 touchdowns on this total. Not much going on here. 29-point spread and 10 touchdowns. Ron, I know you love yourself some Pac-12 football. It's always the Pac-10 to me. But what do you think of this one?
I'm going to go with Stanford plus the boatload of points. We've seen USC score 56 and 66 points the first two games of the season. They failed to cover the first week, covered easily last week against Nevada. I do think Stanford is the by far toughest defense they've faced yet so far this year. And I also think Stanford is going to have some issues offensively. I think USC's defense is undervalued this season, honestly. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Pac-12, I will give credit to USC's defense. Forced 5 sacks last week. They were really good against the run. They made a lot of improvements there. They had a rough week 0 against the run. But I think we see Stanford cover this number, just getting a ton of points. So I think we're getting 29 points in that one, right? So I'll take the point.
I'm gonna go with the biggest value on the board. I'm gonna take Stanford on the money line. I think that getting plus 2,200, anywhere between plus 1,750 to plus 2,200, so that's 17.5 to 22 times your money on a team that's playing against a team with no defense whatsoever. I don't care what they look like. 5 sacks against Nevada. Congratulations. I can only imagine what some of the teams with real defense like Georgia would have looked like against Nevada. I bet you they would have had 50. I think that USC is way overrated. I think they have a quarterback that can flat out play because he's put in an offense where he's got tons of talent to throw it to and plenty of time to throw it. And I think he's going to have that. But I think that, like Ron said, I think this is Stanford defense is going to be able to slow that down. I think they're also going to be able to really nullify any USC running game that there is. And I think on the other side of the ball, they're going to drag that USC defense up and down the field. I don't think they're going to have any answers. And I think that any type of mistake or turnover by USC in this game will not be something they'll be able to rebound. I like the under in punts, the over in points, and Stanford money line. Outside of that, I think Lincoln Riley's an all-around nice guy. Chris? I mean, this guy could be have the worst defenses historically of any coach in the history of the game. I mean, it doesn't matter where he goes. His defense sucks. It's like...
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I'm going to go with the over 70 and lean towards Stanford in the points as well. I didn't have high hopes for Stanford coming into the season, but we've seen a couple of these FCS coaches that have transferred. We saw it with G.J. Kinney with Texas State. We're seeing it with Stanford with Troy Taylor. these guys know what they're doing offensively. And Taylor ran a fast-paced offense at Sacramento State and carried that into that game against Hawaii. And I think Stanford can do enough offensively to give themselves a shot to stay in this game. USC's defense has always been suspect at the best of times, even though it probably will take a step forward this season. I think there's enough here that I could easily see a 45-28 kind of game, if maybe even tighter than that if Stanford decides to give them a game. So give me the over 70, lean towards Stanford in the points.
All right, this is the portion of the show where Chris gives out his premium pick in tonight's Thursday night football game. Who do you like, Chris?
Sorry to disappoint. It's one of the two teams that are on the field tonight.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us.
Draw blood from a stone.
I think, our second year into this show, I think it shows, I think we're a year better. I really enjoyed it. And I think, a little open debate. I think we have a little bit of tech issue here, but I think like some discussion going on as well, which is always good. We welcome the discussion in the chat. And I think, one thing that we know about college football, it's the craziest thing in the world because everybody thinks like there's going to be these 3 or 4 teams at the end of the year that go undefeated. But how many times has an undefeated Nick Saban team won a national championship? How many championships does he have? 6 or 7? How many times has he gone undefeated and won the national championship at Alabama? His first one. That was it. The only time. Every other time was with the loss. So a lot of games to be played and a lot of action. Well, of course, we'll talk about it next week. We'll do some recapping again at the beginning, just opinions, kind of like today. And, we'll either be celebrating our wins or eating some crow. But either way, we'll be showing up and changing our Twitter handles, though. Anyways, thanks for joining us. Make it a winning day. I'm going to try and act more professional next week. Ron and Chris, anything to close us out?
No. Good luck, everybody.
Go Cornhuskers.